The blazing heat from two suns relentlessly scorched the desolate expanse of the alien planet, turning the ground beneath it into a simmering furnace. Riley Stone, now 24, wiped the sweat from his brow, adjusting the settings on his exosuit. His mind wandered back to memories that had stayed with him for over a decade as he neared a location marked by his ship's AI. Approaching target coordinates, the ship's AI voice was as monotonous as ever, atmospheric conditions stable for landing. His heartbeat raced in his chest, matching the rhythm of his determined steps. 10 years. 10 long years of grueling training, of pushing himself to his limits, and of becoming the man he had promised to be, all for this single moment, all for her. Commence landing sequence, Riley ordered with commanding voice, deeper now, reflecting the maturity gained over the years. The boy who had once crash-landed here, terrified and alone, was long gone. The colonial forces had found him after 3 weeks, the result of a failed escape pod. But it was during that time on this harsh world that he had met Taya, and everything had changed. He let his mind drift back to that moment, his eyes closing as the landing gear deployed. "Stay away!" Taya had screamed, her shimmering silver hair swirling in the violent wind as 3 brutish mercenaries advanced on her. Her skin, a brilliant hue of orange, caught the light of the twin suns, and intricate markings pulsed across her exposed skin. The 14-year-old Riley had hidden behind a large rock, his training urging him to stay silent and unnoticed. But those eyes, human-like but rimmed with a strange violet glow, compelled him. "Little human," one of the thugs snarled, reaching for the fabric of her black outfit. "She'll be worth a small fortune." Before Riley could think, instinct took over. He grabbed rocks, hurling them with all his might. "Hey, ugly!" he shouted, his voice cracking with the rush of adrenaline. "Pick on someone your own size." The mercenaries momentarily halted, confused by the tiny human daring to challenge them. That was all Taya needed. She moved with a grace Riley had never seen before, taking down 2 of them with swift, precise strikes. The third lunged at Riley, but his schoolyard fights had made him agile, ducking under the man's grasp. With one final kick, Taya incapacitated the last thug. She approached Riley, her form-fitting dress accentuating her silhouette. Riley's cheeks burned as she stepped closer. "You have courage, young human," she said, her voice musical, rich with an accent he couldn't place. Foolish, but courage nonetheless. She bent down, her silver hair brushing against his cheek, and pressed a soft kiss to his skin. "Come back when you become a man," she whispered. "The reward will be worth it." The sudden thud of the ship's landing gear shook Riley back to the present. For 10 years, he had been haunted by those words, by the memory of Taya, the mysterious alien girl who had vanished into the wilds before he could even ask her name. Environmental scan complete, the ship's AI reported. Local settlement detected 2 kilometers east. Riley glanced at his reflection in the viewport. No longer the scared child who had crash-landed here. He had grown stronger, more determined. His chestnut hair was untamed, but his face had hardened, his jaw set with resolve. The suit's Colonial Forces armor fit him perfectly. His body had been sculpted by years of brutal training. He had kept his promise. He was a man now. The settlement came into view as he crested a rocky hill. The outpost, once a primitive collection of buildings, had transformed. Sleek, modern structures now rose from the ground, and armed guards patrolled the perimeter, their weapons clearly advanced beyond what Riley remembered. "Stop." One of the guards called out as Riley approached. "State your business." "I'm looking for someone," Riley replied, keeping his hands visible. "A woman I met here 10 years ago." The guard's eyes narrowed, assessing him. "Many women here. Name?" Riley hesitated. "I don't know her name. She has silver hair, golden skin with markings. She saved me from mercenaries when I was a kid." Recognition flickered in the guard's eyes. "You're talking about Commander Vera, aren't you?" Riley's heart skipped a beat. She had risen through the ranks. "Wait here," the guard ordered, speaking into his communication device. Time seemed to stretch on as Riley stood in the harsh sunlight, waiting. Finally, the settlement gates creaked open and a figure emerged. Riley's breath caught in his throat. She looked just as he remembered, ageless, Stunning, powerful. The tight black outfit she wore years ago was replaced with fitted military uniform, but it did nothing to dull her presence. Her silvery hair was longer now, braided down her back, and her violet-rimmed eyes locked onto him with an intensity that sent shivers down his spine. "So," she said, her voice carrying the same melodic tones that haunted him for a decade. "You've come back for your reward, then?" Riley swallowed hard, his pulse quickening. "I made a promise." A smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "Yes, you did. And now you are a man." She stepped closer, her scent intoxicating and foreign. "The question is, what kind of man have you become?" "Riley Stone," she said, as if tasting his name. "I've known who you are since you threw those rocks." He blinked, stunned. "You knew?" Vera laughed softly, a sound like bells. "I've known since the moment you showed your courage. But the real question is—" She leaned in, her lips brushing against his ear. "Do you know who I am?" Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked with a fluid grace that made Riley's heart race. Her uniform hugged her form, every movement drawing his eyes. As they walked through the settlement, Riley could feel the curious gazes of others following them. Some watched warily, others with interest. He felt like a spectacle here, an outsider. "You don't get many humans around here, do you?" he remarked, quickening his pace to match hers. Vera smirked, glancing sideways at him. "We've seen humans, but never one invited as an honored guest." Her smile deepened. "They've never seen someone worthy of the Ascension trial." "The what?" Riley asked, his military instincts immediately alert. They reached a large, circular structure at the edge of the settlement. Unlike the sleek modern buildings, this one seemed ancient. Its stone walls were etched with intricate patterns, familiar in a way that made Riley's heart race. It reminded him of the markings on Vera's skin. 10 years ago, Vera began, pressing her hand against the door that hung before sliding open. "When I told you to return as a man, I wasn't just being coy." She led him inside, to a chamber glowing with soft blue light. To save an Australian's life is to earn the right to attempt the Ascension trial. Riley's brow furrowed. "And what does that mean?" Vera turned, her violet-ringed eyes burning with intensity. "It means you must prove your worth, your strength, your intellect, your adaptability. Only those who succeed are considered worthy of becoming part of our people." Riley's voice was rough. "And if I succeed?" Vera's markings pulsed brightly. "Then you will be the first human to be deemed worthy of full Australian companionship." The weight of her words hung heavy between them. "I don't fully understand," Riley admitted. "What is this union?" Vera stepped closer, her golden skin almost glowing in the dim light. "It's difficult to explain in your terms," she murmured, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "But it's a joining of purpose, of essence." Riley's throat went dry. "So, it's not just physical?" "No," Vera said softly, "but that's part of it." She gestured to the glowing symbols on the walls, their rhythms seemingly syncing with his heartbeat. "It's about everything you are." The chamber was alive with ancient energy. "No human has ever attempted this trial," Vera continued. "It tests more than just your strength. It's about who you are, your character." Riley's eyes searched her face. "Why offer this to me? You barely knew me." "I knew enough," Vera said, her fingers brushing against his arm, sending sparks of energy through him. "I've been watching you, Riley Stone, watching how you've grown, how you become the man you are now." "You've been watching me?" Riley asked, surprised. "We have resources," Vera said with a knowing smile. "I needed to be sure you were worthy." Riley stepped closer, feeling the pull of her presence. "And am I?" Vera's markings pulsed brighter, the answer still unknown. "That remains to be seen. The trial will reveal all." She moved to a control panel and activated it. The chamber hummed with energy. "The first challenge begins at dawn. You should rest." Riley steadied his breath, his mind racing. He had no idea what awaited him. But one thing was certain, the next few days would change everything. Vera's gaze remained steady, her voice low and unwavering. "I cannot tell you what's coming next. To prepare would defeat the purpose." This trial must test your true nature, not your ability to train for specific challenges. She stepped closer, her scent, a combination of exotic flowers and something far more intoxicating, seeping into his senses. Know this, Riley Stone. No matter the outcome, you've already impressed me more than any human I've encountered. Her hand rose to his face, her fingers gently tracing the spot where her lips had touched him years ago. The touch sent a surge of warmth through his body, and for a brief moment, the past 10 years seemed to collapse into the intensity of that simple contact. Rest well, Vera murmured, her voice softening with a tenderness that took him by surprise. Tomorrow, you begin your journey to becoming something no human has ever been. Before Riley could speak, she turned to leave, but he caught her wrist. A pulse of electricity ran through him at the contact, and Vera's markings flared in response. Is it worth it? Riley asked, his voice barely above a whisper. This reward you promised? Is it worth 10 years of waiting? A smile curved Vera's lips, one that spoke of promises beyond imagination. That depends entirely on how much you want it. Her free hand rose to his chest, resting above his rapidly beating heart. How much do you want it, Riley Stone? The way she spoke his name sent a rush of blood to his face, and in that moment, he realized that whatever trials lay ahead, his return to this alien world had set in motion something far deeper than he'd ever imagined as a 14-year-old boy, throwing rocks at mercenaries. I'll see you at dawn, he said simply. Vera nodded, her expression a mix of approval and expectation. Indeed, you will, and then we'll discover exactly what kind of man you become. The first rays of the dual suns had barely broken the horizon when Riley arrived at the ancient chamber. The night had been restless, filled with anticipation and thoughts of what the trial might entail. Vera was waiting, but she wasn't alone. 5 Australian elders stood in a semicircle, their golden orange skin adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Among them was a younger male Australian whose posture radiated hostility. This is Krell, Vera explained, noticing Riley's gaze. He will oversee your first trial. Krell stepped forward, his silver hair cropped short against his copper-toned scalp. I protest this mockery, he announced, his voice cold and cutting. He addressed the elders rather than Riley. No human should be permitted to attempt the sacred trial of ascension. The eldest Australian, a female with markings that covered most of her visible skin, raised her hand. The ancient laws are clear, Krell. Any being who saves an Australian life earns a right to attempt a trial. Laws written before we even knew other species existed, Krell countered, shooting Riley a look of open contempt. And yet, laws we still honor, the elder replied firmly. Prepare the chamber. Krell's markings pulsed with what Riley interpreted as frustration, but he complied, stepping toward a control panel embedded in the wall. Vera approached Riley, her voice low. Ignore him. Focus only on what lies ahead. What exactly does lie ahead? Riley asked, his curiosity piqued. The chamber of reflection, Vera answered. It will draw from your mind your deepest fears and manifest them as reality. She placed a reassuring hand on his arm, the contact sending a jolt of warmth through him. Remember, what you see isn't real, but your reactions to it are. Before Riley could respond, the floor beneath him began to glow, concentric circles of light spreading outward. Mist rose from hidden vents in the chamber. Begin, the elder announced. The mist thickened rapidly, obscuring everything around him. Riley's military training kicked in almost automatically. Control your breathing, he muttered under his breath. Assess your surroundings. Identify threats. But as the mist swirled around him, it seemed to invade his mind, dragging out memories he thought he had buried. Suddenly, he was no longer in the chamber. He was back on the battlefield, the one at Proxima Centauri 4, where he had lost half his squad to an ambush. The sounds of dying men filled his ears, the smell of plasma fire thick in the air. Blood soaked the ground beneath him. This isn't real, Riley muttered to himself, forcing the words from his lips. He tried to remember Vera's advice, to center himself. This is just a trial. But the scene felt all too real. The weight of his weapon in his hands, the blood-stained bodies of his friends, the scream of Captain Reynolds. You left us behind, Harmon. Captain Reynolds' dead eyes stared at him accusingly. You ran. I didn't run, Riley countered, his voice steady, though the guilt threatened to overwhelm him. I followed orders. I was bringing intel back to command. You abandoned us, another fallen comrade accused, materializing out of the mist. Riley closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. This isn't real, he reminded himself. This is a trial. When he opened his eyes again, the battlefield had disappeared. Instead, he was standing in his childhood home, watching his father pack a bag. I'm leaving. The apparition of his father said, not even looking at him, You're not worth staying for. The words cut deeper than Riley expected. His father had abandoned them when Riley was only 8, and no part of him had always blamed himself. Hearing it again brought all those old wounds to the surface. No, Riley said firmly, his voice unwavering. You left because you were weak. Because you couldn't handle responsibility. That's not on me. The scene shifted once more, this time to Taya. But she wasn't the same. This version of her was laughing at him, surrounded by Australian men. Did you really think I'd choose a human? She mocked. You're not even worthy to breathe our air. A stab of insecurity pierced Riley's heart. He feared he'd misread everything, that he had spent 10 years chasing a fantasy, a dream of a girl who had no interest in him. But then something clicked. This wasn't right. No, Riley said, his voice firm. You're not her. The illusion of Taya snarled, her face twisting unnaturally. Riley realized that this was all a falsehood, a lie meant to break him. The vision wavered. He noticed something odd, a small device embedded in the wall of the chamber, pulsing with an energy that didn't match the rest of the room. His military instincts kicked in. He moved toward it, ignoring the increasingly desperate illusions trying to distract him. The device was cleverly hidden, but now that he'd spotted it, he could see it was foreign to the chamber's design. Without hesitation, he ripped the device from the wall. The mist dissipated instantly, and Riley found himself back in the chamber. The elders were watching, expressions ranging from surprise to approval. Krell stood rigid, his markings flashing with unmistakable anger. What is this? Riley asked, holding up the device. The eldest Australian approached and examined it. An amplifier, she said, her voice grave. It would have intensified the chamber's effects beyond safe levels. All eyes turned to Krell, whose copper skin had darkened with what Riley guessed was the Australian equivalent of a blush. The human should face the true test of our ancestors, Krell insisted, not some watered-down version. That is not your decision, the elder responded firmly. You are removed from these proceedings. 2 guards moved in and escorted Krell out of the chamber. Vera approached Riley, her eyes shining with something that made his heart race. You did more than face your fears, she said softly. You saw through deception. Her hand brushed his arm, and a shock of electricity raced through his nervous system. How did you know the illusion of you felt wrong? Riley asked. It didn't match what I know of you, he admitted. Vera's markings pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to match his heartbeat. And what do you know of me, Riley Stone? The way she said his name made heat rush through his body. Not enough, he replied honestly. But I'd like to learn more. The eldest Australian cleared her throat. The first trial is complete. The human has succeeded, despite interference. She nodded toward Riley with newfound respect. Rest. The second trial begins at dusk. As the elders departed, Vera remained, standing close enough that Riley could feel the warmth radiating from her golden skin. You impressed them, she murmured. That's not easily done. And you? Riley asked, his voice soft. Have I impressed you? Vera's lips curved into a smile that sent a rush of heat through him. You impressed me 10 years ago with stones and courage. Today, you showed something more valuable, wisdom. Her fingers traced a pattern on his arm, leaving a trail of fire in their wake. The man you become is intriguing. The look in her eyes made Riley's breath catch. Whatever the next trial would bring, he knew with certainty that the reward Vera had promised was becoming even more enticing by the moment. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Riley found himself in the second trial chamber. This one was unlike the first. The environment was entirely different. an alien ecosystem encased within a shimmering dome, filled with strange flora and unusual rock formations. The atmosphere was thick and reddish, shimmering with heat. The Chamber of Adaptation, the eldest Australian explained. This environment replicates the sacred grounds of ancient Australis. For millennia, our young have proven their worthiness by surviving its challenges. Riley studied the chamber with the keen eye of a soldier. The temperature readings on his wrist device were rapidly climbing, well beyond human comfort levels. The atmosphere contains elements toxic to your human physiology, the elder continued. The flora here responds aggressively to foreign presence. The ground itself will resist your steps. Sound homey, Riley muttered, eyeing the thick mist and twisting trees ahead. This will be the real test. Jack couldn't help but remark dryly, sounds like a walk in the park. A faint hint of amusement crossed the elder's face. To complete this trial, you must retrieve the emblem of ascension from the heart of the chamber and return it here. You have one full planetary rotation to do so. Jack nodded, casually shedding his outer armor. The less weight, the better, he muttered. He had to move fast. The elder added one more stipulation. One final condition, no technological assistance. Your suit's environmental controls must be deactivated. That was going to complicate things. Without the suit's protection, the chamber's atmosphere would quickly start affecting his breathing and vision. Jack began disabling his suit systems, his fingers moving with precision despite the looming challenge. As he did, he noticed Vera watching him, her gaze intense. It sent a chill through him. Her markings pulsed with a rhythm he was starting to recognize, concern. Begin, the elder called. Jack stepped forward into the chamber. The heat hit him like a physical wave. The air tasted metallic, burning his lungs with each inhale. The ground underfoot shifted, attempting to unbalance him with each step, but he gritted his teeth and pushed forward. The plants around him reacted immediately. Some fronds recoiled while others reached out with thorny appendages. One plant even released a cloud of spores that made his eyes water and his skin itch. Friendly, he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. He'd covered perhaps a third of the distance when something caught his attention, a patch of vegetation that seemed more aggressive than the rest. Its color was off, darker and more vibrant than the others. Trusting his military instincts, he picked up a small rock and tossed it into the suspicious patch. The reaction was immediate. The plants erupted violently, releasing a cloud of dark spores that dissolved the rock on contact. That's not part of the test, Jack realized, his eyes narrowing. Someone had tampered with the trial, and there was only one person with both the motive and the opportunity to do so. Carefully, Jack bypassed the deadly patch and kept moving toward the center. His vision was starting to blur, and each breath felt like inhaling fire. The ground became even more unstable, forcing him to adjust his footing with every step. Finally, he reached the central platform, where a small crystalline emblem floated in a beam of light. As Jack reached for it, movement caught his eye. A panel in the chamber wall slid open, revealing Krell, holding what looked like a control device. Krell's eyes widened in surprise when he saw Jack. Before Jack could react, Krell activated the device. The chamber's environmental systems went haywire. The temperature spiked instantly, and the already toxic air became a swirling vortex of corrosive gases. Jack grabbed the emblem and dove for cover as vegetation around him began to wither and die from the extreme conditions. Through watering eyes, he saw the chamber door burst open, and Vera rushed in, her environmental suit hastily donned. "Jack!" she called, her voice muffled through the mask. "Vera, stay back!" he shouted, but she was already moving toward him, skillfully navigating the dying vegetation with ease. A loud rumble shook the chamber, and Jack knew the environmental systems were about to collapse entirely. He spotted Krell, making a run for it through the maintenance panel. "The chamber's going to breach," Vera warned, reaching Jack's side. "We need to get out." "Oh, not without stopping him," Jack insisted, gesturing to where Krell had disappeared. Vera hesitated, but then made a decision that clearly went against protocol. She removed her mask and pressed it to Jack's face. "Breathe," she commanded. The clean air hit his lungs like a wave, clearing his vision instantly. Before he could protest, Vera was already pulling him toward the maintenance panel. Her own breathing was becoming labored in the toxic atmosphere. They squeezed through the narrow opening just as a section of the chamber ceiling collapsed behind them. The maintenance corridor was dimly lit and cramped, but Jack could see Krell's retreating form ahead. He's heading for the environmental control hub. Vera gasped, her golden-orange skin paling from the exposure to the toxic elements. If Krell succeeded, the entire settlement could be at risk. Despite his own exhaustion, Jack surged forward, closing the distance to Krell with determined strides. Krell turned, surprise and hatred contorting his features. "You should be dead, human." "Sorry to disappoint," Jack replied, lunging forward. Krell was fast, but Jack's Colonial Forces combat training gave him the edge. A swift strike to Krell's wrist sent the control device clattering to the floor, and Jack followed with a takedown, pinning the Australian against the wall. "It's over," Jack said firmly, holding Krell in place. Vera caught up, her breathing ragged but her eyes fierce. "Why, Krell? Why endanger our entire settlement?" "Because he threatens everything." Krell spat, glaring at Jack. "Humans cannot be allowed into our sacred traditions. They'll corrupt everything we are." Security personnel arrived quickly, taking Krell into custody. As the immediate danger passed, Jack became acutely aware of Vera's condition. The toxic atmosphere had left her weakened, her markings pulsing erratically. Without hesitation, he swept her into his arms. "Where's your medical facility?" he asked. "Down the corridor," she managed, her body surprisingly light against his chest. Jack looked down at her, this extraordinary being who had risked her life to help him. To hell with the trial. The Australian medical chamber was unlike any hospital Jack had seen. Vera was placed in a regeneration pod, filled with luminescent fluid that interacted directly with her markings, causing them to pulse with renewed vibrancy. "She'll recover fully," the Australian healer assured him. Her choice to remove her protection was unexpected. Jack stood vigil by the pod, the crystalline emblem still clutched in his hand. The elders arrived, their expressions grave. "You retrieved the emblem despite sabotage," the eldest acknowledged, "and prevented a greater catastrophe. But the trial was interrupted." "With respect," Jack replied, his eyes never leaving Vera's form, "I don't care about your trials. I care about her." To his surprise, the elder's markings pulsed with what seemed like approval. Jack Harmon, maybe the most important test of all. Jack hadn't left Vera's side for 3 full cycles of the regeneration pod. The luminescent fluid had gradually restored her golden-orange complexion, and her markings regained their vibrant pulse. When her eyes finally opened, the relief that flooded through Jack was overwhelming. "You stayed," she murmured, her voice raspy. "Of course I stayed," Jack replied, helping her as the pod drained, and she stepped out, wrapped in a shimmering robe that clung to her damp skin. The eldest Australian entered the medical chamber, her ancient eyes appraising them both. "The council has deliberated on your situation, Jack Harmon," she said. Jack straightened, still supporting Vera with one arm. "Your actions during the sabotage have satisfied the requirements of the second trial," the elder continued, "and more than satisfied them." Her markings pulsed with approval. "You prioritize the welfare of an Australian and our settlement over personal achievement. This is the essence of what the trial of ascension tests." Vera's hand found Jack's, her fingers intertwining with his in a gesture that sent warmth cascading through his body. However, the elder continued, "Krell's faction grows restless. They claim that without completing the traditional third trial, no human can truly be deemed worthy of Australian companionship." Jack felt Vera tense beside him. "What exactly is this third trial?" he asked. The elder and Vera exchanged a glance laden with meaning. "The bonding," Vera explained, her markings shifting to a deeper hue that Jack hadn't seen before. "It tests compatibility between potential mates on all levels, physical, mental, spiritual." "Mates," Jack repeated, the implications of the words sending his pulse racing. "The reward I promised," Vera said softly, her purple-ringed eyes holding his. "Among my people, when one saves another's life, they earn the right to attempt a permanent bond. It's more than what humans would call marriage. It's a joining of essence. Jack's mind reeled at this revelation. And this is what you meant when you told me to come back as a man? Yes, she admitted. A boy couldn't handle the bonding. It requires complete maturity, complete openness. The elder cleared her throat. Traditionally, the bonding is conducted privately, but given the unprecedented nature of this union, the council requires witnesses to validate its authenticity. Witnesses? Jack asked, suddenly uncomfortable. Not for the physical aspects, Vera clarified quickly, her markings pulsing in what Jack now recognized as the Australian equivalent of a blush. Only for the ceremonial elements and the final confirmation of compatibility. The elder nodded. The ceremony will commence at midnight. I suggest you both prepare yourselves. With that, she departed, leaving them alone. Vera moved to a window overlooking the settlement, her silvery hair catching the light of the setting suns. You can still decline, she said softly. Jack joined her at the window, studying her profile. Is that what you want? For me to decline? No, she answered without hesitation, turning to face him. But you should understand what you're agreeing to. The bonding isn't temporary. It's a lifelong connection that transcends physical distance. Our essences would be intertwined. Jack reached out, his fingers tracing the intricate markings on her arm. They pulled beneath his touch, responding to him in a way that made her breath catch. Tell me something, he said, his voice low. That day 10 years ago, when you kissed my cheek and told me to come back, did you know then what you were offering? Vera's eyes softened. I knew you were special, different from any human I'd encountered. The way you charged in to help a stranger with nothing but stones and courage. Her hand rose to his face, her fingers tracing the spot where her lips had touched him a decade ago. I didn't plan to offer the bonding, she confessed, her voice gentle. It was instinctive. And now, Jack asked, acutely aware of her proximity, the subtle scent of her skin that had haunted his dreams for years. Now I'm certain, she whispered. The question is, are you? Instead of answering with words, Jack leaned in, closing the distance between them. Their lips met, and the contact sent a surge of sensation through him, like nothing he'd ever experienced before. Her markings flared brightly, illuminating the dim chamber as her body melted against his. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Vera's eyes widened with wonder as she looked at Jack, her gaze filled with surprise. That was unexpected, she whispered. Jack's concern was immediate. Unexpected? Bad unexpected? He asked, his voice tightening with worry. No. She laughed softly, the sound like the chime of distant bells. Among Australians, the first kiss is usually much less intense. Your human passion is quite remarkable. Jack grinned. And that's just a preview. Her markings pulsed rapidly as a playful glint danced in her eyes. Then I looked forward to the full experience. A soft knock interrupted them, and an Australian attendant entered, bowing respectfully. Commander Vera, the council requests your presence for pre-ceremony preparations. The human must also prepare separately, as tradition dictates. As Vera turned to follow the attendant, she paused and turned back to Jack, her voice taking on a sensual edge that made his heart race. Tonight, you'll discover exactly why I asked you to return as a man, she promised. And I assure you, Jack Stone, it will have been worth the wait. The ceremonial chamber was unlike anything Jack had seen before. Ancient symbols adorned the polished stone walls, illuminated by soft blue light that pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat. The Australian elders stood in a semicircle, their elaborate robes and glowing markings creating a surreal, otherworldly tableau. Jack had been dressed in traditional Australian attire, a form-fitting garment that left his arms bare, with intricate patterns etched into the fabric, mimicking Vera's markings. The material felt alive against his skin, responding to his body heat and movements. A hush fell over the chamber as Vera entered. Jack's breath caught in his throat. She wore a ceremonial dress, a black, form-fitting creation with strategic openings that revealed her luminescent markings. Her silvery hair cascaded freely down her back, adorned with tiny crystals that caught the light. Their eyes met across the chamber, and in that moment, Jack knew with absolute certainty that the decade he had spent becoming the man standing before her had been worth every second. Approach the circle of unity, the eldest Australian intoned, her voice resonating through the chamber. Jack and Vera stepped forward together, their fingers intertwined. The floor beneath them began to glow, concentric circles of light spreading outward from where they stood. The bonding is 3 phases, the elder explained. The communion of mind, the harmony of spirit, and the union of essence. Each phase must be completed successfully for the bond to form. Jack nodded, tried to appear more confident than he felt. Vera squeezed his hand reassuringly, her markings pulsing with a rhythm that somehow calmed his racing heart. Communion begins, the elder announced. A soft mist rose from hidden vents, enveloping them in a shimmering cloud. Jack felt a strange tingling sensation at the base of his skull, spreading upward. "Open your thoughts," Vera whispered, her voice warm and gentle. "Don't resist." Jack closed his eyes, focusing on relaxing the barriers of his mind. Suddenly, he wasn't alone in his consciousness. Vera's presence flowed into him like warm sunlight, bringing with it flashes of her memories, emotions, and sensations. He saw her childhood on a world with 3 moons, felt her pride when she earned her commander's rank, and experienced her shock and intrigue when a young human boy fearlessly confronted mercenaries to save her. "This is incredible," Jack thought, feeling her response. Her mental presence brightened with pleasure. "Your mind is different from an Australian's," Vera's thoughts whispered back, filled with wonder, more compartmentalized, yet remarkably adaptable. Jack felt her curiosity as she explored his memories. His determination during colonial forces training, his loneliness on distant outposts, and, most vividly, the decade he spent thinking about her, wondering if he would ever see her again. "You truly never forgot," her thoughts whispered, tinged with awe. "How could I?" he responded silently. The mist began to dissipate, signaling the end of the first phase. Jack opened his eyes to find Vera staring at him with newfound understanding. "Communion is achieved," declared the elder, genuine surprise in her voice. Few Australian pairs connect so completely on their first attempt. Vera's markings pulsed with what Jack now recognized as pride. Humans are remarkably compatible with us in ways we never imagined. "Harmony of spirit begins," the elder announced, and the chamber's lighting shifted to a deep indigo. The ceremonial garments they wore began to respond, becoming almost fluid against their skin. The patterns shifted to create matching designs across both their bodies. "This phase reveals our essential natures," Vera explained softly. "Our truest selves." Jack felt profound warmth spreading through his chest, radiating outward. To his amazement, his skin began to emit a faint blue glow where the garment touched it, similar to Vera's markings. "That's not supposed to happen," one of the younger elders whispered, earning a sharp, silencing glance from the eldest. Vera's markings were changing too, shifting from their usual patterns into new configurations that seemed to mirror the energy emanating from Jack. Their glows began to synchronize, pulsing in perfect harmony. "Your spirit resonates with mine," Vera breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "The garment is responding to your essence, as if you were Australian," Jack murmured, the connection between them becoming undeniable. "Maybe our differences aren't as significant as our similarities," Jack thought, feeling a deep sense of rightness, of completion. The eldest Australian stepped forward, examining the phenomenon with ancient eyes. "In all my cycles, I've never witnessed this, a human spirit manifesting Australian resonance." "Is that bad?" Jack asked, his voice uncertain. "On the contrary," the elder replied, her voice reverberating with awe. "It suggests a compatibility beyond our understanding. Harmony is achieved," the elder continued, more profoundly than anticipated. The chamber's atmosphere shifted again, the light becoming a warm amber, bathing them in a golden glow. "The final phase approaches," the elder announced. "Union of essences, traditionally conducted in private, but the initial binding must be witnessed." The other elders formed a circle around them, their hands raised in a ceremonial gesture. "This is where it gets interesting," Vera whispered, her voice carrying a sensual edge that sent Jack's pulse racing. "Place your hands upon each other's hearts," instructed the elder. Jack placed his palm against Vera's chest, feeling the rapid beat of her heart, or hearts, as he had discovered during their mental communion, that Australians possessed a dual cardiovascular system. She mirrored his action, her touch sending waves of pleasure through his body. Now we begin the vision quest, the elder continued. You will see potential futures, both challenges and triumphs, that await your union. The chamber seemed to dissolve around them. Jack found himself and Vera standing in a series of rapidly shifting scenes, some on Earth, others on alien worlds. In each vision, they faced different situations together. They navigated cultural misunderstandings, with humans staring at their unconventional pairing. Vera laughed as Jack attempted to explain baseball to her. He stood proudly beside her as she addressed an interspecies council. One vision showed them facing discrimination from both sides, yet standing resilient together. Another revealed them building a home that blended both their cultures. In yet another, they stood watching dual suns set over a landscape where human and Australian children played together. Our potential futures, Vera's voice echoed in his mind. Some challenging, some beautiful, all worth facing together. The visions coalesced into a single, powerful image, the two of them older but still vibrant, surrounded by what appeared to be a family that bridged both their species. The sense of fulfillment and joy emanating from this vision was overwhelming. Gradually, the ceremonial chamber rematerialized around them. The elders were watching with expressions ranging from awe to disbelief. The vision quest is never manifested so clearly, the elder said, her voice hushed. The compatibility is undeniable. Vera's markings glowed more brilliantly than Jack had ever seen, pulsing in perfect synchronization with the energy emanating from his own body. The public portion of the ceremony is complete, the elder announced. The final union must now be completed in private, as tradition demands. As the elders filed out of the chamber, Vera turned to Jack, her purple-ringed eyes filled with intensity that made his breath catch. Now, she said softly, taking his hand and leading him toward a doorway that had appeared in the chamber wall. You will discover the true reward I promised all those years ago. Jack followed, his heart racing with anticipation. The doorway led to a private sanctuary, adorned with soft illumination that responded to their presence, brightening and dimming in harmony with their emotions. 10 years ago, Vera said, turning to face him, I saw potential in a brave boy. Today, I see fulfillment in the man you become. Her fingers traced the contours of his face with exquisite tenderness. Are you ready to complete what we've begun? Jack drew her closer, feeling the remarkable heat of her golden orange skin against his. I've been ready since the moment I returned to this planet. As their lips met, the markings on Vera's skin flared brilliantly, casting the sanctuary in a radiant glow. The connection between them was more than physical, transcending cultural differences and even the vast distances between their worlds. Jack awoke to the gentle touch of dual suns streaming through the sanctuary's windows. Vera lay beside him, her golden orange skin glowing in the morning light. Her silvery hair cascaded across the pillows, and her markings pulsed with a peaceful rhythm that somehow matched his own heartbeat. The night had been transcendent. Their union had been unlike anything Jack could have imagined, a melding not just of bodies, but of essences. It was as if they had temporarily become a single being while still retaining their individual selves. As if sensing his thoughts, Vera's eyes opened. Her purple rings brightened at the sight of him. I can feel you, she murmured, placing her hand over his heart. Not just physically. I can sense your emotions, your presence. Jack realized he felt it too, a constant awareness of her that went beyond the physical. Is this normal for Australian bondings? He asked. To an extent, Vera replied, sitting up, but this is more intense. The elders warned me it might be different with a human, but no one anticipated this level of connection. She closed her eyes in concentration, then smiled. I can sense you like some morning refreshment, specifically coffee, a strange human beverage I've never tasted. Jack laughed. That's impressive and slightly unnerving. The bond will stabilize, Vera said, a smile playing on her lips. But it will never be the same as before. Vera assured Jack, rising with fluid grace, we'll learn to control how much we share. As Vera moved to the refreshment alcove, Jack noticed something extraordinary. Where his hand brushed against his own arm, a faint glow appeared, similar to the markings that adorned Vera's skin, but uniquely his own. "Nira," Jack called, his voice tinged with curiosity as he examined the phenomenon. "I think something's happening to me." She returned quickly, her eyes widening at the sight. "The resonance from the ceremony. It's manifesting physically," she explained, her fingers tracing the faint patterns on his skin. The touch sent pleasant shivers through his body. "This is unprecedented." Before Jack could respond, a sudden commotion outside interrupted their discovery. Shouts and the sound of energy weapons discharging echoed through the sanctuary. "Krell," Vera hissed, instantly alert. She moved toward a hidden panel, retrieving 2 plasma pistols and tossing one to Jack. They dressed quickly, their ceremonial garments adapting to become more practical. Jack felt a surge of protective instinct that wasn't entirely his own, Vera's emotions flowing through their bond. "He's escaped custody," Vera explained, checking her weapon. "I can sense his rage. He's coming for us." Jack concentrated, surprised to find he could indeed feel a hostile presence approaching. "How is this possible? I shouldn't be able to sense him." "Our bond," Vera replied, her voice calm. "You're accessing my abilities as I'm accessing yours. Your military tactical thinking is currently helping me formulate a defense strategy." Jack grinned, despite the danger. "That's actually pretty damn useful." The sanctuary door burst open. Krell stood there, flanked by 3 supporters, all armed with Australian weapons. "The abomination must end." Krell snarled. "This human corrupts our sacred traditions." Jack stepped forward, his newly manifested markings glowing with intensity. "Your traditions allowed me to attempt the trials. I passed them fairly." "Impossible!" Krell raised his weapon. "No human could truly bond with an Australian. Yet here we stand." Vera replied calmly, her markings pulsing in perfect synchronization with Jack's, united in ways you cannot comprehend. Jack felt a surge of inspiration through their bond. Without speaking, he knew what Vera was suggesting. They raised their hands simultaneously, their markings flaring with shared energy. A wave of force erupted from their combined effort, disarming Krell and his supporters without harming them. The rebels stood frozen, astonished by the display of power. "Impossible," Krell whispered, his voice barely audible. Security forces arrived, led by the eldest Australian. She surveyed the scene with ancient, knowing eyes. "The prophecy," she murmured. "The joining of stars." "What prophecy?" Jack asked, his voice tinged with confusion. "An ancient text speaks of 2 beings from different stars whose union would bridge worlds and herald a new era of understanding," the elder explained. She approached them, examining their synchronized markings with wonder. "For generations, we assumed it referred to Australian houses. We never considered it might mean different species entirely." Krell was taken into custody, his expression one of confused defeat rather than hatred as he was led away. Jack sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The other Australians were looking at him and Vera with new respect, even reverence. "This changes everything," the elder said. "Both our worlds must be informed of what has occurred here." 3 months later, Jack stood beside Vera on the observation deck of an Earth orbital station. Below them, the blue-green planet rotated serenely, while behind them, representatives from both human and Australian governments prepared for the formal signing of the first interspecies alliance treaty. "They're calling us the bridge between stars," Jack remarked, showing Vera the news headline on his datapad. "Apparently, we're responsible for ushering in a new era of interspecies cooperation." Vera laughed, the sound still like musical chimes in Jack's ears. All because a 14-year-old boy threw stones at mercenaries, and because a beautiful alien girl promised him a reward worth waiting for. Jack pulled her close, his markings now permanent and distinctive, glowing in response to her proximity. The past few months have been a whirlwind of diplomatic meetings, scientific examinations, and cultural exchanges. Their unprecedented bond had become the foundation for understanding between humans and Australians. "Admir Chun is staring at us again," Vera whispered, amusement coloring her thoughts as they flowed through their bond. He still can't believe a colonial forces soldier managed to become an interstellar diplomat overnight. Former colonial forces. Jack corrected with a grin. My new position as interspecies liaison apparently requires my full attention, as does your position as my bondmate. Vera's fingers intertwined with his, and just then a diplomatic aide approached, clearing his throat. They're ready for you both. The ceremony is about to begin. As they turned to join the gathering, Jack paused, looking once more at Earth below and the stars beyond. Where will we make our home? He asked, the question that had been on both their minds. Vera smiled, her purple-ringed eyes holding his. Remember our vision during the bonding? That house on the cliff, overlooking both ocean and desert, on the colony world at Alpha Centauri. Jack nodded. Where both suns and Earth can be seen in the sky, a perfect bridge between our worlds. Vera agreed, just like us. The treaty signing proceeded with all the pomp and circumstance befitting such a historic occasion. But for Jack, the true miracle wasn't the political alliance. It was standing beside the extraordinary being who had seen potential in a frightened boy and waited for him to become a man worthy of her. As they sealed the treaty with their thumbprints, his normal, hers luminescent, Jack felt a wave of contentment flow through their bond. 10 years of waiting, of becoming the man he needed to be, had led to this moment, a connection that transcended species, to a love that bridged stars. Worth the wait. Vera's voice whispered in his mind. Jack smiled, his newly acquired markings glowing with the depth of his emotion. Every second. 1 year after the historic treaty signing, Jack and Vera stood on the balcony of their cliffside home on Alpha Centauri's premier colony. The dwelling was a perfect blend of human comfort and Australian aesthetics. Curved walls that caught the light, technology that responded to touch, and panoramic views showcasing both the vast ocean and the russet desert beyond. Happy bonding anniversary, Jack said, handing Vera a small box wrapped in shimmering material. The material responded to her touch, changing colors as her fingers traced its surface. Her purple-ringed eyes brightened with delight. You remember the Australian tradition? Of course I did, Jack replied with a grin. Though I'm still getting used to celebrating our union 3 times a year. Earth calendar, Australian cycles, and Alpha Centauri rotations. More celebrations means more private rewards. Vera teased, her markings pulsing with a pattern Jack had come to recognize as distinctly provocative. She unwrapped the gift, gasping when she discovered a pendant crafted from rare metals from both their home worlds, twisted together in an intricate design that matched the unique pattern their markings formed when they touched. It's beautiful, she whispered, immediately placing it around her neck. The metal seemed to come alive against her golden-orange skin, responding to her markings with a subtle glow. Not as beautiful as you, Jack replied, drawing her into his arms. Their bond had only deepened over the past year. Jack's acquired markings had become more defined, creating patterns that complemented Vera's natural ones. When they embraced, their markings aligned and intensified, creating a light show that was both beautiful and deeply intimate. I have a gift for you as well, Vera murmured against his ear, her breath sending pleasant shivers down his spine. Though it's not something I can wrap. Through their bond, she sent him a tantalizing glimpse of her intentions, sensations and images that made his pulse quicken and his markings flare with anticipation. That's, quite a gift, Jack managed, his voice rough with desire. Vera laughed, the sound still like musical chimes. After all this time, I've been researching human customs, she explained, her fingers tracing the contours of his chest through his shirt. There are still so many traditions we haven't explored. Is that so? Jack raised an eyebrow, enjoying the mischievous glint in her eyes. And what traditions might those be? Instead of answering, she took his hand and led him inside. The dwelling's environmental systems responded to their elevated emotions by dimming the lights and adjusting the temperature to the perfect balance between human and Australian comfort. Do you remember what I said to you that very first day? Vera asked, turning to face him. When you were just a boy who'd thrown stones at mercenaries? Come back when you become a man, Jack recited, the memory still vivid after all these years. The reward will be worth it. Vera's markings pulsed with intensity as she moved closer. I've been thinking about that promise lately. Jack's own markings responded, creating patterns of light that dance across his skin. Oh, I thought we'd thoroughly explore that reward. That's the wonderful thing about rewards, Vera whispered, her fingers working at the fastenings of his shirt with practiced ease. The best ones keep giving. Through their bond, Jack felt her playful mood mingled with genuine emotion, love, desire, and a deep appreciation for the journey that had brought them together across the stars. I never imagined, Vera continued, when I kissed the cheek of that brave, foolish boy, that the man here would become a change not just my life, but the relationship between our entire species. While Jack pulled her closer, their markings aligning and flaring with shared passion, he murmured, and I never imagined that the mysterious alien girl in a tight black dress would turn out to be the other half of my soul. Half, Vera teased, her hands exploring the contours of his chest, where his newly acquired markings glowed brightest. I'd say I'm at least 60%. 55, Jack counted with a grin, his fingers finding the sensitive patterns along her spine that always made her markings pulse with pleasure. Their playful negotiation continued as they moved toward the bedroom, their bond amplifying every touch, every sensation, creating an experience that transcended both human and Australian understanding of intimacy. Later, as they lay entwined, their markings still glowing with the aftereffects of their shared passion, Vera traced lazy patterns on Jack's chest. Worth coming back for? She asked, echoing the question she'd posed a year earlier during their bonding. Jack looked at this extraordinary being who had waited for him to grow into the man worthy of her, who had faced prejudice and danger to forge a bond unprecedented in either of their cultures, who continued to surprise and delight him with each passing day. Worth crossing the stars for, he replied, pulling her close as their markings aligned once more, illuminating the room with a physical manifestation of connection that had begun with a boy's courage, a girl's promise, and a reward that continued to unfold in ways neither could have imagined. As they lay there, entwined in each other's arms, Jack couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. Their journey, from the first time he'd thrown rocks at mercenaries to standing here now, had been nothing short of extraordinary. The challenges they had faced, both internal and external, had only made their bond stronger. And now, it was more than just a connection of minds and spirits. It was a partnership that bridged two worlds, two species, and everything they had once thought impossible. Jack's thoughts drifted to the treaty signing, the historical moment that marked the beginning of something new for both humans and Australians. He had never imagined that his actions, as a frightened, naive boy, would have such a lasting impact. And yet, here they were, standing at the forefront of a new era of peace and cooperation. He had earned more than just her love. He had earned the respect and recognition of both worlds. Vera's voice broke through his reverie, her hand tracing lazy circles on his chest. "What's next for us, Jack?" she asked softly. He smiled, looking into her eyes, the depth of their connection unspoken but understood. "Next, we continue this journey together, and we make sure that no matter the challenges, we face them as one. Their love, their bond, would shape not just their future, but the future of the stars themselves. The galaxy, it seemed, had more to offer than either of them had ever dreamed.